got to touch on that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe if you got little kids, this might not be the hour because it'll probably get a little graphic at certain points. But because
Yeah.
we'll be talking about all the stuff they talked about at the summit. We should have had a guest for today, in addition to a co-host.
Today we actually have a very special guest.
Oh, we do. All right.
We have John Sorensen with us, who is our Chief Operating Officer here at
title.
Catholic Answers. Fancy title
Yeah.
because he does a lot of work.
Because he's a fancy
Welcome,
man.
John.
Wait, no, that's
Thank
not
you.
right. Hi, John.
Yes, I'm fancy.
So you run Catholic Answers. Tell me this. So you're like in an elevator and someone goes, what do? You go, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Catholic Answers. What's Catholic Answers? Then what do you say in the elevator?
I tell them that we are a media apostolate dedicated to explaining and defending the Catholic faith, and so we use a variety of platforms to do it: video, audio, internet, you name it.
Radio Maria.
Radio Maria.
Because they're
Maria.
kind enough to have us on their air.
Exactly.
There are probably not too many media types of media that we don't do.
I think we hit all of the
You
main
think we hit them
ones.
all? Radio.
Yeah.
And
We can't be-
We're
We
not
don't-
making movies.
we-
We're not
yeah,
making
we're
feature
not-
films. Or
Right.
we
But
do make a
that's
TV
not,
show.
We
What?
can't be everywhere, but we, as many media as possible, we try to get in there, and then also keep, we do our best to keep an eye on what's on the horizon.
Yeah. Right.
And how do we at least kind of prepare for that, because the media landscape changes all the time.
I know
When Catholic Answer started, it was a tract apostolate. That's what they did. They produced tracts.
So that was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So tell people what a tract is.
A tract is short for tractatus, but it's basically just like a pamphlet style explanation of something about
Right.
whatever it is that, in our case, it'd be something about the Catholic faith.
Right. Okay. And then started what? Magazine and books?
Yeah,
and
well, it went from the tracts to a newsletter, and then from the newsletter to a magazine, and then from the magazine to a radio program, and then from a radio, and then
Yeah.
they got
So
into the
stuff
internet, and
right.
and it just kind of expanded from there. But it started essentially as one thing, and then as the landscape changed, and they were able to get into different media, the company did that, and so we're just carrying on that tradition.
As I said, we're very grateful to be on Radio Maria. Please support Radio Maria because they all these signals, these radio signals that you hear us on, they own those. You can find out about them at radiomaria.us. You can find out about us at Catholic.com. Okay, so big Vatican summit this weekend.
Yes.
There was the thing is, it's even bigger, I guess, because in November there was a big U.S. bishops meeting where they were going to put out some norms for dealing with bishops who abused people, or I guess it followed Cardinal McCarrick in Washington. The idea that if you have a bishop who is systematically abusing seminarians and children, how do we have this happening? 10 years or even more after 15 years after all the scandals broke the first time.
Right.
And so there was a thought, well, we've got to do something to address bishops who are abusive people, and we don't really have much
No.
in that. So they said, okay, so the reason why this big summit is so big, or in part it got so big, is at that meeting the Vatican said, no, hold on, don't do anything. We want to have a worldwide meeting. So there were big expectations for this worldwide meeting. Did you guys follow it, or
I didn't read any. It sounded like they were still covering the abuse of children by wayward priests.
Yeah.
And I didn't hear a lot about the issue with bishops.
Yeah, and several people pointed out, because I think that the reason that it got reported that way is that's what the Pope focused on. Pope Francis gave the last address, but there were 9 talks before him, and an American cardinal, Cardinal Cupich from Chicago, gave a talk on reform among the bishops' conferences, and it didn't get any coverage because I don't know why the Pope did not focus on it, but he didn't. He chose to focus on child abuse.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that, in my mind anyway, is if you had to put them on a sliding scale, with one thing being the most important. I would say the protection
kids,
of children
yeah.
is the ultimate.
Yeah.
And so I agree with that. But
Like you've got a checklist of things to stop doing.
Right.
Abusing
Definitely.
children, number one.
Yes.
Abusing children.
Protect the kids first.
Right,
yeah.
but the list doesn't end with number
No,
one.
exactly. It's not that it's just it's more important, but only a little more important. I mean,
Right.
abusing anybody is wrong,
Right.
so they need to stop it all. But
Also, sexually active priests are wrong. It's the
Well,
same
yeah.
as
Yeah.
we don't say, oh, well, married couples that cheat, a little bit. This is
Yeah,
a total
yeah,
violation of your state of life that you freely chose, apparently.
Yeah. The ongoing conversations after all of the scandals have come out have been somewhat disheartening, just because I don't know what is actually going to happen with bishops. I don't know that bad bishops are actually going to be removed.
Yeah.
And that's disheartening, especially because I know so many great priests who deserve to have
Great bishops.
great bishops.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, let me give out the number. If you call, you come straight into the studio here, and we'd love to speak with you. 888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. I have to say, after the summit, the thing that I think I was craving, I realize this now that the summit is over, and I think many Catholics are craving, is concretely, what are we going to do?
Mhm.
Not, oh, man, we're really going to try harder,
Yeah.
but like concretely, tell us what is going to happen that is going to, you can't say you're going to root out all the evil in the world or something,
Right.
but
Yeah.
a practical plan for how we're going to address this situation with bishops, not just with
Yeah.
priests and children, but the situation with bishops. And I didn't feel like the practical plan came out of it. I feel like we're still waiting for that.
No, it's like we were talking about earlier before the show, that it felt a little bit like sometimes in business when you go into a meeting and everybody talks and you leave the meeting without any action items, and so of course
Yeah.
nothing gets done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and
you go ahead. Marie.
things can sometimes happen famously slow in the Catholic, world when you're when you're working, I guess, in religion, if you will. Sometimes things can happen slowly, but I think people want to actually hear not just, oh, we're going to put together committees of lay people, and those lay people will be, investigating X, Y, and Z, but okay, who are the lay people?
Yeah.
How are you going to select them? When is that going to happen? What's the date for it? We want a start date.
All right.
And I know that,
That may be coming. Because
I hope
some
so.
interesting things were
I
said.
hope so.
Cardinal Supich gave 12 points. Like, here's what we need to do. And so that's very concrete. And the Pope gave 8 points, but I want to share them with you.
All right.
The Pope's 8 points that going forward, because he said it himself. He actually used the word concrete. We need concrete things to do. So he gave 8 points moving forward. Number 1, a change of mentality to focus on protecting children rather than protecting the institution. The great, except change in mentality is unmeasurable.
Yeah.
How do I know when the mentality has changed?
I mean,
Do
if
you know what
you're
I'm saying,
on
John?
the inside and you're the one sort of calling the shots, then the only way to gauge that is yourself. So I suppose the Pope is in a position to gauge it somewhat. I mean,
Yeah.
how much interaction does he have with a bishop in some faraway place? I don't know. But
Right.
I suppose it's possible.
But what I'm thinking of in terms of concreteness, that is somewhat concrete, but a change of mentality is a very hard thing to know. What are we talking about here? If it had been something like, and that means a process for, even removing a bishop who misbehaves, then the change in mentality has some practical thing that goes along with it, and that's why I think a lot of people felt this was incomplete. Not bad. It was very good.
The
Just incomplete.
sentiment is right.
That's
I
exactly
think,
right. Yeah.
but difficult to measure, and maybe a little bit harder in practice than
Yeah.
in just
Definitely
saying it.
harder in practice. A culture shift, which is what that sounds like he's
Yeah. Right.
suggesting is that is slow and painful, and it's the hardest kind of change to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right. But it also, I have to say, focuses on children. There's nothing here about the misbehavior of adults with other adults, which is a good deal of what,
Yeah.
like in the case of Cardinal McCarrick, who has now been what used to be called reduced to the lay state. They try not to say reduced to the lay state anymore, but has lost his faculties as a priest.
Yeah.
Would that have been like? It turns out that there were children, at least one child involved in the Cardinal McCarrick case. But say no children were involved.
It would still be bad.
That's still a disaster. What
He
happened
still
there?
took,
Like,
I mean, he still took advantage of other human beings.
so why
which
are we
was
just focusing on
completely
children
wrong.
still, and not just the general misbehavior of bishops?
I think it's a very sensitive, difficult issue because not only does it deal with the problem of power,
Yeah.
the problem of homosexuality, active homosexuality, I should say, and also the problem of loneliness amongst our priests and bishops because our diocesan priests don't live in community.
There's not
They're
enough priests anymore.
alone.
Yeah, right.
And we were meant to live in community. Even people called to the celibate life are meant to be in community with other people.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that's an excuse. None of those are
but these
excuses.
but let's talk about the real situation in the church today, and those are very concrete things. Like if someone had said, to the degree possible, priests should live communally. That's a concrete step.
Right.
You know, that's not a change in mentality thing. And I have to say, I have to confess right from the beginning, and maybe should have earlier, that I do think that reforms are very possible. Like, I don't think we're in an impossible situation. The problem is if you don't say the things like you just said, Marie, that we have these isolated diocesan priests, then and maybe even religious priests, I don't know, then we're not going to get to the thing. And I think one of the things we have to ask ourselves is the church being poorly governed because as it is currently organized, it's ungovernable. I mean, for example, just to take Cardinal McCarrick as an example again, he's the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, D.C., where he has hundreds of priests, well over 100 parishes. There's no possible way he can know the people of his diocese or for them to know him. And so we've always tried not to have too many bishops. You know, there's about 6,000 ordinaries. An ordinary is a bishop who's in charge of a diocese. So there's about 6,000 ordinaries in the world today. Why is no one saying, maybe it's time to say we need 30,000 ordinaries and make the dioceses small so that people know their bishop, priests know their bishop, the parishes see the bishop regularly, not the bishop is this remote figure who's basically a CEO. St. Peter and St. Paul, they weren't CEOs.
No.
They were in the house churches with people. So I just say that because I don't want to give the feeling as we go through these 8 points that the Pope gave that it's just all negative.
Right.
I just don't think we're getting deep enough. That's my feeling.
It would help the bishops to see their people and to see the need in front of them in human faces. And it would help the people to see their bishop actually doing the dirty work, if you will. When you become a bishop, it's not like all of a sudden your priestly vocation changes and
now you're an executive.
now you're above doing, no, your people need you even more as a bishop.
Right.
And it's not fair to ask bishops to personally know as many parishes as are underneath them right now.
Or 500,000 or 1 million or 5 million. And in the case of Mexico City, I think it's 18 million Catholics. Yeah. How's the the Cardinal Archbishop of Mexico City supposed to know? It just seems to me that we have inflated this role of bishop and we're married to it. And the Pope, who says the pastors should smell like the sheep, why does he not recognize that what about a massive reform? Not a reform in governance, but a reform in get the church smaller and more local,
Right.
so that we don't have these CEO bishops who are removed from their people.
Subsidiarity, right?
Hey, there you go, John. Fancy word.
Yeah.
The rule is if you say a fancy word, you have to explain it.
Oh, no, you're going to be better at explaining that than I am.
I don't know that I am.
I pull levers in the background. I don't.
Generally speaking, higher levels of authority, subsidiarity means higher levels of authority should not take on roles that appropriately belong to lower levels.
Sure.
So the state should not do what the family does, and the federal government should not do what the state does.
See how much better you were at that than I would be?
Yeah. So
That's why he's a radio host.
But in the Catholic Church, traditionally, small is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like we want it to be done locally and personally, and we've got these CEO bishops all over the world. And some of them live like CEOs. Many of them do not.
Right.
Many of them they're good, holy men. But you can't govern something if it is structured in an ungovernable way.
Right.
Jesus had 12 people with him.
Yeah.
And he could have had as many as he wanted and done it well because he was Jesus.
Well,
but
strictly speaking, at least 70. I mean, he had 12 apostles.
12
but there was
apostles.
at least 70 people with him.
But that's a small community.
Yeah.
70 people is a small community.
Right, and I don't know if you know this, but he's the Lord God, come down from on high. Like he's not trying to govern 18 million people himself.
I did know.
Yeah, okay.
And also, over the past year, I have investigated different churches here in San Diego, and there were 3 that I, in particular, really liked. And I kept trying to figure out why it was that I really liked them. They're all 3 very different. But in the end, I realized they were the smallest communities that I could find. They were the communities where people actually talked to me after the liturgy.
Right.
And they were the communities where I got to know the priests that were saying the Mass too.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was craving that I didn't know that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But parishioners should be able to have that relationship with their priest, their pastor. It's not possible when you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people attending your church every weekend.
Right.
It just isn't. I mean,
And think of the stress of that pastor who's made to do it all by himself, doesn't have a community of support. You're asking for trouble
yeah.
in those situations.
I think there is, I think about community. Even married life.
Yeah.
This. You go home. You're you're living in community.
Yeah.
I live with my wife and daughter, and when I go home, I have to, I'm not a bachelor, so I'm behaving in a way that I might not if I was by myself. And then I come here, and you guys keep me on my toes here. So I'm in, at work, and when I go home, I'm essentially in community.
Yeah.
So if priests don't, and I don't live where I work, thank goodness.
Right.
I would go crazy if I had to do that.
Right.
And so, I wonder if priests could live in community. Do they necessarily have to live in the rectory at the parish where they work?
No, in many places, the priests don't live in the rectory anymore, which is not necessarily. I mean, you could have, say, if you had a situation that was geographically, where the parishes it would work, you could have a house of, say, 5 priests who handled 5 parishes, but they come home to communal life. Now, the thing is, at this point, that would be very harsh for a lot of priests, because if you've lived without community for the majority of your life, that's not like, oh man, I can't wait to put up with 4 other people.
Yeah, it's that culture shift that is difficult.
Let's continue with the 8 things. You're listening to Catholic Answers today on Radio Maria US, a Christian voice in your home. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Our co-host today is assistant producer Marie, and our guest is the chief operating officer of Catholic Answers, John Sorensen. We're talking a bit about, the summit, the big summit they had this weekend over the course of 4 days, Thursday through Sunday, to try to tackle the current crisis in the church having to do with sex abuse and with misbehaving priests and bishops who we always want to remind people are not even close to the majority. I mean, we're talking about a small group, but one that again and again seems very difficult to get a handle on and address, so that the church doesn't have to keep facing these somebody else got hurt somebody else got abused situations. So point 1 was a change of mentality. Point 2 that the Pope made was a recognition of the impeccable seriousness of these sins and crimes of consecrated persons. Again, I really like that, but that needs with the following penalties,
Right.
with the following serious consequences.
Recognizing the seriousness of it by taking
doing
these measures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
even if those measures had been expressed in a kind of general way, it would have at least given direction to the church. Hey, this is
Right.
what we're going to be doing. And I have to say, I feel like there's some missed opportunities here. Point number 3, a genuine purification, beginning with self-accusation.
Oh, I agree with that 100%.
Okay.
Recognizing the problem is the first step.
Right.
You
And we
know.
laity, we don't want to talk about how we're involved in
Yeah,
this.
remember G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle?
I did not know that. I do remember G.I. Joe.
Back when they tried to stick, positive messages into a cartoon about war.
They would say, knowing is half the battle.
Yeah. They always had like a little PSA thing at the end of the cartoon.
I didn't.
G.I. Joe,
too
knowing is
funny.
half the battle.
I didn't know you were formed by G.I. Joe. That's why you're such a good
Well,
boss.
yeah, I didn't
around
come
here.
into the church until, much later.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, self-accusation, like knowing ourselves. We got to take that one up. Again, I might say I'd like a little more follow-up on that one with point A, point B, point C or something. But this is number 4, positive formation of candidates for the priesthood in the virtue of chastity.
Wait, say that again?
Positive formation of candidates for the priesthood in the virtue of chastity.
Oh, yeah.
Like, not giving mixed messages to young men coming into the priesthood that we're going to wink.
Yeah.
We know you'll probably fool around on the side, but we're going to wink at that.
Yeah.
Which is not happening in most places, but it clearly was happening where Cardinal McCarrick was and some of the other.
Yeah, I actually like that one a lot because there is a negative way to teach chastity and a positive way to teach chastity as well. And, positive chastity or healthy chastity is saying yes to what God is asking of you in your stage of life.
Right.
And not the negative message, which is just, I think chastity is mistaught sometimes as, deny your
no, yes.
sexuality. No,
Right.
the answer is always no. And
Right.
it's chastity is saying yes to what God is asking you to do that day, in the stage of life that you're in, whether you're married, whether you're religious, single, whatever it may be.
Right.
So, but
And I have to say, it's not just the clergy that are not well formed.
Oh, no, I'd like
Oh,
to hear that come from the pulpit because
Right.
it's Catholics in general are not well formed on that issue because no one really talks about it. So if the priests talked about it more, maybe they would be more likely to adhere to the church's principles in that regard, and the people would hear it from the
Right.
pulpit and
Right.
hopefully take that home and live it out.
But I do have a conspiracy theory myself that
Do you?
there's a certain way in which when we don't want to follow Jesus, we conspire with one another just not to talk about certain things, And so the laity kind of got comfortable with the sexual revolution, and so we weren't bothering our priests and bishops about how comfortable they were getting with the sexual revolution, and so they didn't bother us, and we didn't bother them, and all this now 2 generations of not really bothering each other about the sexual revolution has resulted in laity who don't know what the church teaches about human sexuality or think it's basically the church doesn't really teach that, And so the joy of living a chaste married life, for example, is missing for many people because we didn't talk about it. And then we have this problem with priests. I think we've supported one another, frankly, in our unwillingness to follow Jesus.
Yeah. Well, keep me in check, dude. I'll help you out too.
All right.
All right.
I don't have a lot of good G.I. Joe slogans like you do. But.
I have plenty of them.
All right, continuing with the 8 points. Point number 5. I really like this one. I'm just going to say before I say it. Strengthening and reviewing of guidelines by Episcopal conferences, reaffirming the need for rules. All right, that seems like, okay, that's serious. Look, we're going to make some rules about how the conferences work. It doesn't, to me, get to the depth of the problem, but at least it's got a concrete feel to it.
Yes. Yeah. There's nothing concrete. The suggestions there about how to do it aren't concrete, but saying that this is something they want to do.
Yeah.
That's all you really want from this. If the summit is supposed to be like the first step in a movement to reform these things,
Yeah.
then that's more of the kind of thing I would like to hear.
Yeah, right. Number 6 is the accompaniment of those who have been abused with an emphasis on listening. I don't know. I don't even that to me has the feeling of words. I don't know,
Like a platitude, like a Hallmark card.
it sounds platitude.
Yeah.
A bit. I mean, I agree
Once again, if he had followed it up with
by doing these things.
by offering, third-party counseling to victims and, visits from, whoever, I don't know. It needed
Right.
to go a step further.
Yeah.
But the idea is good that
Right.
we can't just say that we're sorry
Right.
and everything's okay. When
No, you have to
something
listen
really
to victims. You have to
Yeah.
walk with them. Yeah, but it just sounds again, it's just to me vague, but he is the Pope and he has a billion person church to govern. So maybe this is a first step, and he'll say to the bishops' conferences, I want to see how you flesh out those 8 points. Give me some, but I don't know. But I feel like the hour is late now, and maybe we need a little more sense of urgency.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's good though to listen. We went to
Yes.
Maria and I went to the local bishop here. Bishop McElroy had the listening sessions, or I can't remember what they were called, but we went to one of them, and there was a guy that got up, and he was pretty angry, and the bishop could have shut him down,
Yeah.
and he didn't. He let the guy finish what he had to say, and it went on for a while. And he let this guy finish what he had to say in front of this room full of people, and I felt like that was the most positive thing that happened actually at that meeting, was that this guy was angry and they let him get it out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So and that concrete action turns it into not just platitude, but that okay, now we're living this out. Number 7, ensure that seminarians and clergy are not enslaved to an addiction to pornography.
Yeah.
This is the
Great.
laity too.
Yeah,
But-
get every single Catholic on some program like Covenant Eyes or something.
Yeah.
I think this is really good. I think this is for everybody, as John said, for the laity too. And
Just so
I-
that people know, laity is what we're saying, not lady.
I'm
Like,
sorry, laity.
No, we all sound like we're saying, we
It's-
need to get the lady unaddicted to pornography.
No,
like,
no,
who
no.
is this lady?
It's-
No,
She's got lots of problems.
yeah, laity.
We have a bad habit in America of not saying all of our T's,
Yeah, it
and
sounded like this
I'm
poor
learning,
lady. We really do need to
learning
help
that
her.
I do that frequently.
Number 8, combat sexual tourism around the world. Where'd that come from? I'm glad we're doing that. Yes,
Yeah.
but that's
I don't know if that's as central to what he was previously discussing and what is actually going on.
And it does partly connect to his overall talk, which was to say there's a global problem here, and we have to see it as beyond the walls of the Catholic Church. Children are being horribly abused around the world. It's systematic and it's brutal, and it's got and that I applaud him for. I know a lot of people will hear that as, oh, that's the Catholic Church just trying to brush it off on everybody else. But I think if we're seriously policing ourselves, then we do have to say to everybody else, look, let's be honest. Public schools are not better than Catholic schools. Matter of fact, all the data says they're worse. No, there's not a religion that's doing better in this. So look at the scandals in Hinduism and Buddhism in recent decades.
Right.
So, I mean, I think, but if we're not policing ourselves, we really can't. Like you got to take the log out of your own eye.
Yeah.
That's true. I still struggle to find, how the global problem of sexual tourism has that much to do with
Yeah,
reforming the church from the inside.
yeah,
I mean, it is a problem, no doubt. You don't want to minimize that, and it's a cultural problem. But the problem is that the culture has seeped into the church.
yeah.
So how do you fix that? What does that have to do with internally
Yeah.
correcting these problems inside the church?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I have to say I have a bit of that feeling there. I mean, the Pope did try to, in the context of the speech, broaden the examination, and so it does come out of that. But it feels when you read the ADEM like, what? Like, how is that gonna? That seems like a different problem.
I'm
Like,
glad that I get it. I get the sense that he's calling for for culture to be reformed, that the culture of our world is one of the culture of death and one of a culture that does not respect the dignity of other people. That does need to change. But if we have our sources, our priests going out into the world, they have to be bringing, they have to be bringing the right message, and they have to be bringing the right behavior and bringing the sacraments to people. And I think it has to start there. So that last one kind of threw me for a loop, not because it doesn't need to happen, but because how is this fitting in this particular conversation?
Right.
Let's make the Catholic Church what it needs to be, so that it can help other people.
Well, one suggestion that came from an archbishop in Australia was create a Vatican office that does nothing but deal with this.
Yeah.
And I thought that, that's a concrete thing. And then explain how is that office going to relate to the bishops' conferences and to individual bishops. And then now we've got something.
Right.
But I will go back to, I feel like the reforms we need are deeper than we're still admitting to ourselves. That the way bishops are selected is not working. The size of dioceses is not working. The training that's happening in seminaries, I have a suspicion that it's working better than it was 20 years ago. Not just a suspicion. I mean, priests tell you this. That they'll go, it's so much better than when I was in seminary, but that these concrete things, it needs to get down to that level. And it just feels like it's not getting down to that level yet to me. Like it will, but unfortunately, it's going to take more suffering.
Yeah, well, it's like Marie mentioned earlier, things happen painfully slow in the church.
Right.
Although I do feel like in 2002, when the priest abuse scandal erupted, that the church was pretty quick. I mean, within a couple of years, it was like you can't even volunteer to scrub a toilet at the church without being fingerprinted and have a background check. And you're not.
We work at a Catholic apostolate that's 20 miles or so from the diocesan offices. There are no children here. It's an adult apostolate.
Right.
We have to get a background check,
Yeah.
and go through the training. So that's good.
Yeah, that's positive.
And I actually think let's end our discussion there then, because one of the things that we clearly are seeing is there's less child abuse in the church than there was 15, 20 years ago.
Amen.
It actually
Praise
is
God.
working. The programs are actually working in that regard.
And people are, the laity is very, I think, encouraged. The laity is becoming more faithful, I think, in this time. I've seen so many people really cling to prayer, cling to the sacraments, and put forth more of their time volunteering, put forth more of their time in trying to make a difference in their parish and their community. And that is going to help too. And, one of my close priest friends said to me the other day, like, get down on your knees and pray every morning and every night, because that is what is going to bring the most change, is praying about this.
So that gets harder in your 50s because it hurts, man.
Bad knees. Yep.
My knees are still
it's
okay.
Not the getting down,
but
it's the getting back up.
I'll let you know in 25 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. The currency of the church is holiness. Holiness is what enables the church to do what she's supposed to do in this world, and it got de-emphasized at a certain point.
Yeah.
I don't think it was. I know a lot of people say it was Second Vatican Council. I don't think it was. The Second Vatican Council talks about holiness like about 1 billion times.
Yeah.
I haven't actually counted, but I'm approximating 1 billion times.
Well,
in
and
the
that seemed
documents.
to be one of the reasons that they called the council in the first place was to try and address this. And so whether it was successful or not, I don't know, but it seemed necessary at the time. So this is not a problem that just developed overnight.
Yeah.
No, right. Yeah. And holiness is the hardest thing. That's why people avoid. We do anything. We'll have a revolution. We'll complain. We'll watch TV. We'll do anything to get out of the hard work of being holy, because it is the hardest thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is, all of the hardest parts of it, I do feel like as you become willing, Jesus does the hard parts.
Oh, yeah.
Like you always feel like, oh man, like I always I tell people about when I had an anger problem when I was younger. I was mad about some things, and I started going to adoration, and just or not really. What's the one where you go and Jesus is not exposed, but just sit with Jesus in the tabernacle. Is that adoration too?
I still call it adoration.
And I realized I didn't do anything when I was there. I was just sitting with him and talking and and a lot of times thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And within a few months, I start not being as angry anymore. All of a sudden, wait, I'm forgiving things that I thought I can't forgive. And who did that? I didn't do that. Jesus does. So it is the hardest thing that a human being can do, to even make a little incremental change like that towards holiness. But if you turn it over to Jesus, he does it.
Amen.
For you. He will slap you, though. I mean, no, it's true. Like, you have to, whom he loves, he first chastises, and we all need to be chastised a little bit.
Yeah.
Some of us a lot, John.
Yes, I get slapped
Even
a lot.
G.I. Joe.
Some of us a lot.
Our number, 888-318-7884, if you'd like to get in on the conversation. 888-318-7884. I am Cy Kellett, your host, and you're listening to Catholic Answers Today on Radio Maria US, a Christian voice in your home. You can find out all about Radio Maria by visiting radiomaria.us. You can find out about us at Catholic Answers by visiting Catholic.com. Our co-host today is assistant producer Marie.
Hello.
Hello, Marie. And our guest is our own COO, the Chief Operating Officer, is that the right way?
Yeah.
Of Catholic Answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that means his job is to be the meanest person in the building.
It
No.
is. I get to play bad cop
Yeah. He's
I think you kind of enjoy that, actually, John.
deep down inside. I do.
He gets stuff done. He gets it done.
You know what? I feel like John is a convert to the faith who wants us to be good enough at what we do that people who are searching will find what they're searching for. I feel like that's your inner motivation.
That is my motivation. I came to the church, I mean, mostly because of my wife and her example, but she introduced me to Catholic Answers when she got tired of answering my incessant line of questioning. But it was, I discovered the apostolate, and I spent a lot of time on the website reading everything, and I thought to myself, gosh, I have a background in media. I used to make TV commercials, and I ran a video department for a company in the automotive industry, and I thought, I just want to get my foot in the door over at that place and show them what's possible.
Yeah.
Right. And so I did that.
Yeah.
The position opened up for production assistant, which I knew nothing about, but I said, well, I know graphic design, so I know how to speak to the graphic designers about these things.
Yeah.
And they fell for it and hired me.
I don't know if they fell for it. You do have a certain level of talent.
I was
John.
good in the interview process.
Yeah, but I think that's a hard job you have to get people, because there's a natural human laziness, and the laziest creature on earth, lazier than the three-toed sloth, is the radio host. That is there's no job made for lazy people more than radio host.
I feel very fortunate to work in a building where everybody works very hard.
There's always that. Like the people at Apple, they want to make everything insanely great. And those of us in the Catholic Church who get to work for apostolates or parish, why don't we want to make things insanely great? Why don't we want to do that for Jesus?
I do.
Well, get to work then, Marie. Why are you sitting in here? But that's what I feel like you do, John. Like you're
John
like
does get people.
Like, come on, let's make this. We could make it good.
Right.
Let's make something wonderful.
Yeah. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And sometimes you don't. I mean, you got to start somewhere though too. So there's striking a balance, right?
Yeah.
It's like Marie mentioned earlier. Jesus could have snapped a billion people church into existence, but he started with 12
Right.
fishermen. So
Yeah.
you know, there's
11 and one tax collector.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Tax collector. Why did he choose that guy?
Oh man.
That's the mystery of the Lord's vocation. I don't know. He picks who he wants. Again, 888-318-7884, the number. Marie, over the weekend, John and I went to an event that I want to talk about a little bit.
I would love to hear about it.
It was it had a magnificent Master of Ceremonies, and it was the gala event for a little organization called Children of the Immaculate Heart that I feel like little by little we are adopting here at Catholic Answers. More and more people are getting to know them and love them and appreciate the work they do. You know about them.
They're an incredible organization.
Yes.
And actually, I really wanted to be there Saturday, but I'm gonna just have to write a check because I had
'Cause you had a date?
I had my cute little nephew on Saturday night.
All
But
right.
tell everybody about this organization because
Well, first of all, I thought John and I would talk for a little bit about how good the MC was, but if you, I can talk about the organization.
The MC
Okay.
was stellar.
Stellar, right?
Yeah.
The
Cy
district
was
attorney,
the MC
the
for
dis-
everybody.
People
for
know
everybody
that. They
involved.
figured that out, Marie. The district attorney for San Diego was there, Summer Steffen. She was fantastic, and Grace Williams, the founder, spoke. And what Children of the Immaculate Heart is an organization because for whatever reason, San Diego is one of the hot spots for sex trafficking, and it's an organization that is completely committed to helping people who have been victims of sex trafficking, minors and adults.
Yeah.
And that includes caring for women who have children, which is actually quite rare. That a lot of transition programs will not take women with children because what I gather is the permitting processes and all the things you got to do to take care of children is just way harder, and so
Right.
people don't do it.
Yeah.
But you have women who have been trafficked, who have worked in the sex kind of, I don't know, what do you call it, business or industry or whatever, but really have been abused by that for years. They have a child or children. They need help with transition. So that's part of what Grace does. I have to say, my wife is a convert to the Catholic faith. My wife was not baptized when we got married.
Wow.
She, little by little, she's very, she's not the kind of person where you go, I'm going to tell you what to do. Now be Catholic. Maybe your wife had the same feelings about you. You just don't, there's certain people don't try that.
She prayed a lot.
And then I prayed for my wife and prayed at her sometimes while she was sleeping. Lord, fix her. So bit by bit, she came into the Catholic Church. I have never seen her respond to anything like she did to these women, mostly young women, some in their 20s, 30s, 40s, who staff the Children of the Immaculate Heart, and how utterly kind of committed to sharing Jesus Christ in his fullness in a way that heals other people. That's what their life is devoted to. Or facing dangers, facing whatever, that's what these young women do. And my wife said to me in the car on the way home, she goes, why doesn't the Catholic Church talk about that? Like, why do I never hear about, like, there's people who take up the Catholic faith and they do these unbelievable things and it's hidden. And I thought, well, yeah, we've had our problems in recent years, but it really is, you want to be Catholic when you see people like Grace or Amy.
Right.
Or who else is over there? Margaret and Jenna.
Christina.
And Christina. Well, Christina.
Christina's
a wonderful person.
Christina's wonderful.
But yeah. So do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying. My wife, Amy, she just recently started working with them. And I mean, she's been very happy with it. There are, challenges that she tells me about, of course, but the devil's going to attack an organization like that or an organization like this. You know? So prayers for them in their work, because you listen to the stories of some of these women. They didn't have any of them speak at this gala, but I've been to smaller events that they've had, and
Right.
you hear the stories of what these women have gone through.
Well, there was 300 people in the room. So Grace said they invited some of the women to speak, but they didn't want to in that big a group.
No,
That
but
is
nor-
intimidating.
So go
yeah.
ahead, John.
But at smaller places, they've spoken, and you hear their stories, and you meet them, and you're just like, I can't. My heart just breaks for these people. That somebody could, for money, just objectify and abuse another human being in this way. And to me, it's just maddening. And but it underscores why that work is so important and underserved. There's hardly anyone doing this kind of work here in San Diego where the problem is so bad. And some people think, oh, well, it's bad because they're near the border, but it's not a problem
No,
of
it's not that.
immigration.
Right.
That only makes up
It's
like
local
15
women.
to 20%. Yeah, it's the vast
Girls and
majority.
women.
Yeah,
Right.
mhm.
And the girls part, I have to say, is, and boys too. I shouldn't. But the fact that these are children is, you almost can't hear the story. Like you have to kind of like go, all right,
Brace yourself,
I'm
yeah.
going to do what I can, but I can't hear. Maybe I'm just weak in that regard, but it's pretty upsetting.
Yeah.
The stuff, and it's so. I love that Grace, who founded it, Grace Williams, called it "Children of the Immaculate Heart."
Mhm.
That everybody is loved with the purest love. It does not matter what kind of abuse you have or trauma you have suffered, what you've done, what you failed to do. The purest love loves, and that love wants healing, wants you to be healed.
Mhm.
Everybody, and so that's why I feel like, John, we're kind of here. I don't mean this in a fancy way, but we're an intellectual ministry. We
Right.
try to answer people's questions about the Catholic faith, and I think that's very important. I do not, but I feel like part of the reason why more and more people here at Catholic Answers are adopting Children of the Immaculate Heart is it's not enough to be an intellectual. You need to have to be connected to the charity of the church, the heart of the love that is at the heart of the church, and that's what I think Grace and the women over there
Well,
do.
I think, and when you go and you volunteer or you help out organizations like Children of the Immaculate Heart, that especially for us in this building,
Yeah.
that it's important to go out and do those kinds of things. Like Erica from our events department and I went, I think it was last summer, we went and helped at a local parish. We volunteered to pack up food for, I forget what it was, Uganda or something like that. And, so we try to do those things as often as possible because the intellectual part is important, but it helps to emphasize, or it helps to strengthen your resolve to do that kind of work when you also see the charity
Right.
part of it happening and you engage in that also.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said before that holiness is the thing that makes the church able to do what it's supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
But holiness means being freed to love, being freed from all those addictions or confusions or upsets or anger or whatever, being freed from that so that you can love, and to see people taking up that call and actually going out and doing it, loving other people in the most difficult circumstances. It's just magnificent.
Oh, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in talking to some of the ladies over there, they were saying one of the things that they're working on is housing for the adult women.
Yep.
Right, they talked about that.
So I would just say, if you're listening and you're looking for a place to donate money to, which I know it's the beginning of the year, so people are reassessing where they donate money. Children of the Immaculate Heart is a worthy cause
You could
to
just-
donate to.
You can give it to me.
Or-
I'll give a percentage to them. That's fine. Whatever. Yeah. Well, I just want people to find out about them. Just go to childrenoftheimmaculateheart.org, childrenoftheimmaculateheart.org, and find out. They're not the only people doing this. I mean, there are other Catholic ministries doing this, and you could probably find them in your area. But my feeling is, people hear about this sex trafficking stuff, and I think there's an immediate, I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah.
Like I don't. I have no clue what to do about that. But there are people who are, and they can tell you what they need, and maybe you can help
Yeah.
them with
Well,
what they need.
and to that point in Pope Francis's 8 points,
Yeah.
it seemed kind of weird in that context, but at the same time, I'm relieved that more and more people are talking about it.
Yeah.
Our president, regardless of what you think about him, he's
been
spent a
mentioning it.
pretty fair amount of time on that subject, and he's trying to do something about it. I'm not saying that former presidents didn't. You just didn't really hear about it.
No. I remember years ago George Bush said something about it at the UN, but then I don't think he followed, at least to my knowledge, didn't follow up so much. But it's becoming more and more of a, like, people realize what's going on.
Yeah, but within the church and the culture, if we can eliminate the demand for these services, by preaching chastity from the pulpit.
Yeah.
And
whole families, so that, I mean, a lot of, like the district attorney made the point, a lot of these women, they're not like kidnapped and brought into this. They're seduced by a desire for someone to take care of them because, they didn't have a father. Well, that's on us men. How are we treating our daughters? How are we raising them? Are we giving them a sense of themselves about how wonderful and loved they are? Or are we, working so much or even divorcing their mothers and abandoning them? Look, if you got a daughter or son, stay in the home with them until they're out.
Right.
At the very least, that makes a huge difference that keeps so many people from just utter heartbreak. I got to say something real quick because on Facebook, people are saying various things. You can always follow us on Facebook during the show. But Erica, who works here, says her husband, Dane, just asked what the heck I'm wearing. Because they show the video.
The scarf or what?
Well, I'm wearing a Boston Celtics shirt with a scarf.
Yeah.
And apparently,
because that's
this
how we
is
do here.
not fashionable. I didn't realize I was.
So
I'm sorry to interrupt that.
Radio
important.
isn't always about fashion. Sometimes it's just about warmth in here.
Right, but now we have it on a video,
Yeah.
and this is what I'm talking about. There is no creature lazier than a radio host. That's the laziest creature in creation.
I thought you were just trying to be like weird, cool, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
It's like you're trying to be hipster, but you also
failing.
have a basketball T-shirt
No,
on.
I just like to wear a scarf in the wintertime because I
Yeah.
don't like to be cold at all. And people I know will laugh at that because we're in Southern California. But it got down into
I wear
the
a
30s
scarf
last
almost
night.
every day.
it was cold this
It
morning.
was so cold. There was frost on top of my house.
I mean, it wasn't like Chicago cold. I don't want to.
I don't know what that is, Chicago cold.
Well,
It's
negative
like-
50 is the kind of cold where you breathe in
no,
and
human life can't
die.
exist in that. There's no.
Yeah.
That means all the people in Chicago are dead, as far as I'm concerned. I have no idea. How do you live in that? That's not possible. I don't know. So you need more of the scarf and a Boston Celtics shirt, but that's what I'm wearing. Also, Erica, who just said her husband Dane wants to know what the heck I'm wearing. She's the person. She's the events coordinator here, and I gotta give her a shout out because we just had a wonderful Catholic Answers cruise.
Yeah, you went on it.
And she did a magnificent job.
Awesome.
Go, Erica.
Thanks for joining us today on Catholic Answers Today. I know it was a lot of tough stuff to talk about, but sometimes you got to. And these are important things that we take the time to talk about. Our guest host today is assistant producer Marie Dixon of the wonderful Dixon family. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you for having me.
And our guest was our boss, John Sorensen, the Chief Operating Officer here at Catholic Answers. Thanks, John.
Thanks for having me, homies. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're really good on the radio, John.
I'll come on more if
You
you
should be a
want.
radio host. You can be lazy. I am Cy Kellett, your host. Thanks for joining us. Jesus Christ is the light of the nations. And we'll see you next time on Catholic Answers Today.